It's nice. I want to go skiing in Colorado. Where did you go? Oh yeah, you were somewhere cool last semester. Yeah, wherever that is. That sounds nice too. Yeah. Vale, Steamboat. All right. Everybody, I'm glad that you made it. I'm sure we'll be having some stragglers here in class. We have 10 of you. It's pretty good. Hito, I will look up the scene chart. Scene chart here shortly, and that should be able to give you a permanent seat. Okay. Um, what I want everybody to do, whether you're on virtual or whether you are in person, is I want you to go to the current module that we are on, and download the timeline. Okay, download the World War II timeline, please. Do that now, please. All right, so gonna go ahead and model what I'm trying to get you to do. And those on Zoom, go ahead and screen share real quick. Those of you in person, so should be able to see the screen now. Great. What I want you to do is go to modules here if you haven't figured it out yet, and still got people coming in. All right, modules, and it says World War I timeline packet. So you want to upload this, and this is what you're going to use to take notes for the next 3 days. Okay, so basically today, Friday, and then we'll have to kick it back up on Tuesday. All right. And then I'll go over more reminders. Need to resume the share. This is what you should download. I'll go over other reminders again, but anyway, there's a blank. You're going to be filling in that blank on your computer. Okay. You can use whatever font or whatever color you want to use. But if you look at it, it's color coded. Okay. You're right. Oh, I thought you were texting. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you could put that somewhere else? Thanks. All right. So you've got in black European events. So anything that happen in Europe are in black. In red, you have events that are in the Pacific. In italics, and then events that had to do with the Holocaust are in blue and they're underlined. All right. Everybody see the code? Katya, can I get a thumbs up? Okay, excellent. So now we can move forward and see where we can get. All right, so here's what I want to do. Get a new share here, and I believe we stopped off with this the last day we were learning, which was a long time ago. And can anybody tell me about what the Anschluss is? The Anschluss. Grace, it's real loud, please. Good. A great answer here in class from Grace Lane. She said it was when Austria gave itself up to Hitler as it did not want to go to war with the Nazis in the Third Reich. So that was the Anschluss. And then the other part, the other little lighter color, that was called, does anyone remember what that was called? Starts with an S, which is one you want to jot down, as I know it's on the test in some way, shape, or form. That was Hitler occupying the Sudetenland. Sudetenland. In the chat box, I'll go ahead and put that for everybody to see. So that's the Sud, Sudetenland, Sudetenland. Okay, for those of you in the room, probably small to see that, Sudetenland. So that was the land that was taken from Germany at the Treaty of Versailles. It also was extremely wealthy. The people spoke German, so it made sense that they were part of Hitler's Germany. Now, both of those land grabs were direct violations of the Treaty of Versailles and of the League of Nations. Is everyone aware of that? So this is where it's going to help us pick us up then. Okay? And what's known as, here we go.
The German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
Okay, so this is Neville Chamberlain. Him and the French Prime Minister met in Munich, and it's more professionally known as the Munich Pact or the Munich Agreement, same exact thing. And they said that after Hitler invaded and took Austria and the Sudetenland, that if he took Poland, which was very obviously looking like he was going to, then they would go to war. But as long as he did not invade Poland, they were going to let him get away with this without any type of punishment. And that's why it says, now we have peace in our time. Herr Hitler is a man we can do business with. Okay, clearly that was wrong, and that allowed for Hitler to have more time to take more land. We call that appeasement. Neville Chamberlain, if you remember right in your textbook, if you actually read it, it talked about how he was prime minister over Winston Churchill because he was anti-war. And so they allowed, indirectly, they allowed Hitler to get more time to build the army up, to prepare for another two-front war, which is eventually going to happen. Okay? So Munich Pact. I think it's out of order. Let me see. Let me make sure it is out of order, but I think it's on your note sheet. When Hitler signs the Munich Pact, he also secretly makes a Soviet non-aggression pact. Is that on your note sheet? Okay. So the Soviet non-aggression pact was a secret behind closed door agreement between Stalin and Hitler that they were going to divide up Poland and all the new countries that have been created at the Treaty of Versailles. They were going to divide them up peacefully. So you see what Hitler's doing here, right? He's trying to keep France and Great Britain off his back, but at the same time, he's making an agreement with this most hated group of people, the communists. That seems a little shade ball, right? Owen, you with me? Yeah, that is, because it is shady, is what that is. Okay. All right. So, obviously, you've seen dominoes before, or checkers fall. You know, when you push one down, what's going to happen? So this is Europe by 1941. Okay. either directly allied, which would be the Deutsches Reich, or indirectly allied, meaning like land they've occupied, or in sense of Italy, they're allies. This is what Nazi Europe looked like by 1941, when they were allowing Hitler to appease, or you follow a policy of appeasement in 1938. What do you think about this? What comes to your mind when you see this? Excuse me? Totalitarianism. Okay. Anything else come to your mind? The first thing I thought about when I was a educated adult and started to learn how to critically think, which was honestly probably not your age, a little older. I said to myself, what in the hell were they thinking? Why would you let a man who's just this crazy, why would you appease him? You're a clown. And he's behind doors making agreements with the other big bully, Stalin. And they're, come on now. You got to have secret police spies everywhere. They're everywhere at this point. There are secret agents everywhere. Everyone knew everything. And yet they were too into not having a war to do anything about it. And then you get this. And you get the extermination of an entire race of people, basically. So you see how these decisions cost more than just their countries. Let's think about how France had to deal with this now. So this is called the Blitzkrieg. Okay. So what happens is Germany launches in 1939 an all-out attack on Poland using what's called the Blitzkrieg. In German, the word Blitz means lightning. Krieg means war. This is called a lightning war due to the speed upon which these tactics are employed. Okay, let me explain it to you this way. Those of you on Zoom, I think I can use this annotator to give you the kind of experience that you deserve, because we can make it feel like we're almost in class, even though we're not. All right, so here we go. Step one, you have what are called stormtroopers. Okay, I got red. It's going to be a little confusing. Let me see if I can change the color. This is a big deal. I'm pretty hyped about this. Okay, we're going to go with pink. You got stormtroopers, okay? They're actually flying in the other way on the map from left to right. They're going into Poland, which they told Great Britain and France that they would not invade. Well, they're invading in an extremely quick manner. Now, next thing you insert is basically they break through Polish lines, okay? Which breaking through Polish lines are not hard, okay? The Poles had no military. They had been a country for less than 20 years at this point. There are historical, actual primary documents saying that they were fighting with swords to try to stop the tanks and heavy bombing. Because what they did was the Germans would actually bomb this area back here really, really, really hard to leave people in a precarious situation. Which way do they go? Well, if the people move forward, they get killed. If they move back, then the Germans would just take the land that they wanted. Then send the stormtroopers in. Then, once you've encircled them, which you see right here in step 3, you just keep moving and doing the exact same thing. You see that? And you continue to bomb in first. You continue to penetrate with stormtroopers and high technology tanks. And then you keep going over and over again. And then this leaves the question. This is what I want you to understand is it's not pretty. Okay, because this part right here, what happens to these people? Okay, these are Polish citizens. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are Catholic, but there are obviously a lot of different things that happen. Sometimes they enlisted in the Nazi army. Sometimes they were just murdered. Many women were raped. I mean, their houses were pillaged for food. And if you were Jewish, your chances of living through the stormtroopers was slim. Okay, makes sense. At this point in the war, they weren't really into mass killing in terms of like using gas chambers or anything like that. So what they used was they would have the Polish neighbors. Like if you were Jewish, you were Polish also, Polish Jew. But they would have the Poles dig holes, okay? Or they'd have the Jews dig holes, and then they have the Poles kill them, shoot them. And then they tell the Polish people, we're going to shoot you unless you take shovels and you fill the hole in. So to get rid of the evidence. So it was, I mean, at this point in time, this is when they employed this middle part right here. In step 3 is what they employed, what's called the Einsatzgruppen. EINSATZ Gruppen, GRUPPEN, Einsatzgruppen. Look it up. Not making this stuff up. Einsatzgruppen were the killing machines. They were the ones that were responsible for what's called cleaning up the mess. They cleaned up the middle circle. All right. And all they were taught to do and all they were asked to do was kill anything that walked. I was in a German house one time. We were having a long dinner. I was like 22, 23. I was over there after I graduated from college. It was a gift from my great grandma, and staying at this guy's house. And we had been, I don't know, Germans have these long drawn out meals where people drink all sorts of beer and wine and liqueur and whatever. We were 4 hours into this dinner, and I got the nerve to ask the guy's house I'm staying at, hey, what is that your grandpa? Or is that your dad? He goes, yeah, that's my dad. He's wearing a uniform, with the Third Reich on it. And I'm like, okay. So what did he do in the war? Yeah, obviously I wouldn't have asked these questions in the right state of mind. It's haunting me still. And he goes like he's broken English. He was like, well, he shot at anything that moved. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and then he was like, he died in the war. So he was born, he was like 1 or 2, and his dad died in the war. He was in the Einsatzgruppen, and that's what he told me. They shot at anything that moved. It's like, okay, I was like, again, I was not the most mature 23-year-old to want to hear that, be able to process it either. So there's probably more than you wanted to know there. But when the Blitzkrieg starts on Poland, the Soviets start rushing in from the other side, and Great Britain and France declare war on Germany. Immediately, this is on your sheet, the Jews are relocated to Poland. So this is where the trains were made and Jewish cities were liquidated to make room for the rightful Germans. It's a term that Hitler uses. Some of you had it in your projects. It's called Lebensraum. Lebensraum, Lebensraum. And that's a German word for living space. They needed to move the Jews first so that they had space to live in and populate in. All right, so next, let's talk about this thing called the Maginot Line. All right, I think a lot of you can see it on the screen if you're in person. I got 10 of you. If any of you want to come closer and over here, you can, by the way. If you want to come up, you feel like you can see better. I don't care, to be honest. All right, so the Maginot Line is this line that was built between Germany and France. You see the dark red on the screen? Everybody see that? So, France used the money that it made from German reparations payments. Instead of building like a complete, like, balanced military, they took all their money and built a set of concrete underground and above ground fortifications, thinking that this could stop or at least slow down any type of German assault so that they won't get to Paris. All right. Seems like a good idea, right? Throw all of your eggs in one basket. Just put it all on red. Is that a good idea? You guys know I like to use Vegas themes in here sometimes on occasion. Yeah, don't put it all on red. You play conservative. Put it just lower your bet a little bit. Move it around. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? So this was not so smart. Because in World War I, the Germans went around. They're gonna go around again. What are you thinking? That's so dumb, Mr. Burnett. I know, Mr. Burnett, it is dumb in my own head. Okay, so these are some really cool pictures of the Maginot Line. Yes, you can go there today and check it out. Have I been there? No. Will I go there someday? Yes. Look at this. Like, you can see the concrete fortifications. So there were like machine guns and bunkers above ground, but there was like 6 or 7 layers below ground. There was airport hangars. Like, literally underground hangars where they kept tanks and planes. Okay. They had cars, hospitals, movie, gymnasiums, recreation places. So they're going to have everything here that's going to make their life great, and they can sit there and stop the Nazis forever. Well, that doesn't work out so well. Okay. The French offensive position was obviously superior because they had set up all these fortifications on the German-French border. But the Germans go round into Belgium again in what's known as the Ardennes Forest. Okay? Ardennes is right here, Ardennes. Ardennes Forest is one of the thickest forests in Europe, and the French thought there is no way that they can make it through that forest and attack us. Especially because they were slowed down by Belgium in World War I, remember? To the point where it got bogged down about 14 to 20 miles from Paris. Well, not this time, my friends. Nazis, you see here, Herr Hitler. Oh, I think that's Goebbels with him. Maybe Himmler. And what's in the background? What do you see in the background there on the left? Oh, on the left. The Eiffel Tower. So it took less than 2 months for the Germans to go around Belgium, neutral Belgium, and take Paris. You take Paris, you take the heart of the French. Here you see Nazi stormtroopers, as people already said, that weird thing in the center of Paris. That's called the Arc de Triomphe. That was built in honor of Napoleon. And I've been on top of that. It's pretty neat. You see a lot of cool stuff from there. But I don't want to see Nazi troops walking through there. And if I was French, or Parisian, I definitely wouldn't want to see that, huh? Wow, Mr. Burnett, this is irony. Does this happen like 3 times, Mr. Burnett? Yeah, it did. Wow, jeez. Remember when they became a country in the Palace of Versailles? You guys see a little tension between the French and the Germans, huh? Yeah. It's interesting. They get along now-ish. Should I say ish? Because they got a bigger enemy, the United States. So this is called Vichy French government. I got to explain it real quick, okay? Because it's also on your test. So you may want to take extra notes, or y'all can always write extra things on those little note sheet. Usually people use their handwriting, but you can just, use your computer to writing. All right, so Germany did not have. See, Jill, take care. Watch the rest of the Zoom tonight, please. So Germany didn't have enough money and bureaucrats to control all of France. So the legitimate French government and Charles de Gaulle actually fled to England, okay? But the Nazis set up a puppet government where the French would control themselves under the doing what the Nazis said. And so the Nazis only occupied the outer areas of France and along the coast. And then the interior, they called it Vichy France. And it was just a puppet government set up by the Nazis. Does that make sense? It took me until I was about 33 to understand that. Yeah. No, the French knew they lost, but the Nazis again did not have the extra, amount of diplomats and bureaucrats to tax and all that kind of stuff while they're waging war on 3 fronts. And so they just set up this puppet government to do it for them. You can see on a map that Vichy France controlled the interior of France, but every point of France that was of any value, the Nazis occupied. All right, so that leaves this slide out of order, but that starts what's known as the bombing of Britain. All right, and the bombing of Britain was a belief that Hitler had that he could bomb the British to the point where they would quit and stop fighting. Okay, that their morale could go low enough that the people would say, we don't want to fight, because Hitler knew what happened when he tried to invade England. It only happened one time successfully in all of history. You guys remember what happened to the Spanish king? Mr. Renshaw loves this guy. Who is it, Mr. Renshaw? Philip. Oh, he loves Philip. Philip, remember, tried to get back at Elizabeth because she wouldn't have the marital relations with him, with his entire Spanish boats. How'd those work out for him? Anybody remember? Well, they weren't able to tell the story the next day because they were all destroyed on the rocks in the wind in the English Channel. So only William the Conqueror in the year 997, I think, around there, was able to invade England from France successfully. So, 1096. Sorry, my bad. 1096. How could I be off 100 years? Anyways. All right, so that starts the bombing of Great Britain. And at first, they are only targeting industrial sites. But within the next 6 months, they will start bombing apartment buildings, hospitals, clothing manufacturers, you name it, to get people to quit. Okay, in 1940 then, this is known as the Tripartite Pact. Okay, but this is why they call them the Axis powers, is that makes like an axis between Tokyo, Berlin, and Rome. They're going to be called the Axis powers in World War II. Okay, here you can see Hirohito, Mussolini, and Adolf Hitler. Okay, all right. I'm not going to talk about this all that long, but there's definitely, I don't know if you've seen the movie before. Raise your hand in class if you've seen the movie Miracle at Dunkirk or Dunkirk. Nobody has seen it. Man, like a couple years ago, this was like this unbelievably popular. Anybody on Zoom want to raise your hand? Tell me that they've seen it. No one? Okay, well, then I guess I'll tell the story because it used to get old. All right, so here's what happened. You see the British Navy right here, and the flags. You see the port of Dunkirk. There were 230,000 British soldiers who had tried to help save Paris. But they got there late. Hitler's troops had marched for 3 weeks straight in the stormtrooper style. And so Hitler gives his men what's called a break, a furlough, a week off of no fighting, of sitting there and roasting, eating off the people that they're standing there, their food, drinking their wine, whatever, you know? And the entire British army that was available at that time was stranded and did not have boats to get back across the channel. Had Hitler have kept his foot on the gas pedal, that could have been a different ending to the Battle of Britain. because the entire British Navy or Army taken as captive as prisoners. Who knows how the Nazis would have treated them? That could have caused the British to surrender right there. Britain falls. Who's next? Let's use common sense. Starts with two. It's two letters. Anybody? The U.S. Correct. So Churchill then gets elected as prime minister. He is very, very famous. Okay, here you can see him pictured as a bulldog. Hold the line. Keep calm and carry on. Has anybody ever heard of those posters before? That is basically propaganda made during the beginning of the battle for Britain. Okay, people had to move under the ground. This was people sleeping in the tube. You guys ever been in? Anyone ever been in the tube before? In London, that's what they call it. So obviously, people weren't using the tube and their Oyster cards. They were sleeping in the underground trains. That's what that is. Okay, if you ever get a chance to go to London, go to Winston Churchill's War Office of the Interior War. It is, I would say, on another level of crazy. They have all of the maps still up. It looks like you are walking into a normal basement in an apartment in London. All of a sudden, you go down these stairs, this massive door opens up, and their entire operations for their army and navy were all kept on these, like on these pins and these movements, like on the wall. And they're still up to this day. And again, it's crazy because it literally looks like a totally normal house outside, because that's what they had to do to survive these bombings. Okay, and again, it was Hitler's idea that this would work. It got so bad that the president of the United States, along with Winston Churchill, actually met on a boat outside of Newfoundland. Ever heard of Newfoundland? It's by Nova Scotia in Canada. Yeah. Okay. So the two most maybe important people in the world that could stop Hitler are on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic. That sound like a good idea? No, it don't sound like a good idea, Mr. Burnett. Why? Oh my God, they got torpedoes. They got submarines. They got planes. Very, very secretive meeting. They sing the Marines hymn, you know, da 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 da. They have a church service on the boat together, and then they shake hands. And the United States says, in this handshake, because the president could do it without asking Congress. Congress didn't want to go to war. Congress wanted to continue the New Deal and get out of debt. And he says, we will just lend you whatever you need to keep fighting. Immediately, 40 U.S. destroyers are sent to Great Britain to secure their navy. Bullets, ammunition, planes. If you've ever seen the cheesy part of Pearl Harbor where there's all this dumb backstory and these men are fighting over the same woman, in reality, those men at the beginning of the movie were fighting for the Royal Air Force, because we provided pilots and planes for the battle for Britain, so that they wouldn't quit and they wouldn't lose. Because the United States knew what was next. Also, what was the mistake in World War I? What was the big mistake of World War I? Folks, the terrible triangle, right? The United States, okay, charging Germany, Britain, France for all of the war materials, and then essentially never getting paid back and having had to fight another world war. Never good. So it's called the Lend-Lease Act. That's what that is called. Yes, sir. Yeah, make it a good one. Okay. Now, Hitler is going to turn his sights then on ruining his relationship with Stalin, going against their non-aggression pact within 2 years of signing it. And so June 22nd of 1941, Operation Barbarossa is launched. Okay. This is called Operation Barbarossa. You can see where they are attacking. Napoleon did the same thing, very unsuccessfully. Take a look at this operation. It's named after the HR Emperor, Holy Roman Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa. All right. Largest military operation in world history, 4 million soldiers stretched around upon an 1,800-mile front. That's a long front, isn't it? A lot of communication you got to be able to do. German advance was successful, and obviously the Germans did not like the Soviets, so they treated the Soviets even worse than they treated the Poles or the Ukrainians. They committed such egregious atrocities and things. I don't really want to say it out loud, but that's one of the reasons why when the Soviets came back into Germany at the end of the war, they were as their worst to the German people. Okay, it's pretty ugly. Now, by 1942, then you end up with this. Okay, this is the Axis powers. Okay, I always ask students, what surprises them when they look at this map? Is there anything that surprises you here? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, well, what surprises Mr. Burnett even now is I'm shocked at the size of the Japanese Empire. Look at that. Like, that is little Japan. They control Indochina. All of the West, what was called the Indonesia today, but is, very populous area. You can see how much of China they control, all the very wealthy coastal cities. Strait of Malacca. Yeah. Also, look at Africa. See the presence in Africa. We'll talk about that here shortly. So that is 1942. When this happens, then you start to see that there are a lot more Jews in these areas that were newly created countries after World War I. And so that's where you see the Star of David, Jews being recognized. And this is the first step of dehumanizing the Jewish race. Okay. The Einsatzgruppen couldn't kill as many Jews as there were in the areas they were taking over. So they now had to try something different. And we'll talk about that here, in the next day or at least early tomorrow. All right. I have a quote that I want somebody to read on Zoom. Okay. I think it's good for you to see this quote because it'll help you understand the sequence of events that's about to happen. So can somebody on Zoom share it? Raise their hand, please. Lily Dole, is your internet good? All right, you got it.
Okay. One should keep in mind that it was in fact Japan, not China, that had benefited from these countries' support. Japan's primary source of raw materials like petroleum and scrap iron for its war in China, and of high-end technology like machine tools, was the United States. In 1938, the United States, 57.1%, the United Kingdom and its empire, Malaya, Canada, India, Australia, 20.7%, and the Dutch and Dutch East Indies, 8.6%, supplied 86.4% of Japan's imported war materials. The United States produced 60% of the world's oil, the Dutch East Indies less than 10%. 55% of the Japan's oil came from the United States, 14% from the Soviet Union, and 10% from the, oh shoot, I can't see the bottom, sorry.
Dutch Indies.
Okay.
All right, so why would I have you read this out loud? Why would I have us look at this quote? What do you think the significance here is? When Japan defies the Treaty of Versailles and continues to invade China like they were told not to, the United States freezes all of their assets in the United States banks. So if Japan had $40 trillion in JP Morgan Chase, that money was frozen. Any materials they had in the United States was frozen. No oil could be sold from the Dutch East Indies, from the United States, or from the British. So 86.4% of their war materials were taken from them. If somebody did that to you, would you get mad? What might you do? Go to their home and tell them to give it back to me. I like to play war, says Japan. Okay? So I think this quote helps people put into perspective that there should not have been a surprise at Pearl Harbor. Do we understand this? The fact that Japan was controlled by the military meant that there's no way they should have not seen this coming. Okay. This is military strength in the Pacific. This is our Pacific fleet to the Japanese Pacific fleet prior to December 7th, 1941. Whether you have it on your screen or whether you're looking at mine, obviously I took this picture staying over it at the museum at Pearl Harbor, okay? So I didn't make this up, obviously. So U.S. has 3 aircraft carriers to 10 for the Japanese. We've got 9 battleships. They have got 10. Obviously, they have a lot more cruisers than us, more destroyers, way more submarines, about equivalent to the same aircraft. And you can see how many more thousands of men that they have in the South Pacific. So, what do you think about this? Sam Sewell, I want you to think critically here. Tell me something I don't know. Sam, what do you think about this? Yeah, good. Can you say that a little louder for me? Okay, so it appears that Japan has a little bit stronger presence in the Pacific, doesn't it? Is there any other observations we can make from this? Could have or should have the United States been more prepared? That's one thing I always wanted students to realize. Then I always ask, hey, Dad, why were we not more prepared? I don't have anybody asking me that right now, so I'm really wondering what people at home are doing right now, other than the ones I can see actually paying attention. Why were we so ill prepared? Remember, our Congress said we're not going to go into any more wars, but yet we cut off Japan from 86% of their war supplies. No one wants to talk about it. Fine, we'll go to the next slide, see if you want to talk about this. This is Admiral Mutsuo Fushida, the Akagi Air Group, Imperial Japanese Navy. The objective of day-to-day training was to fit man and plane together until each fighter pilot knew and understood his craft and can put it through the paces as a jockey manages his racehorse. What is that quote saying? So we have the comment that they want their pilots to know their planes and be one with their planes. This, of course, is part of the indoctrination of the Japanese military and turning it into a spiritual thing. Okay? You're one with your plane, you die with your plane. Remember Bushido? Okay, seppuku, the ritualistic attitude of the samurai during the warring period in Japanese history. Well, just like samurai would die before they would get captured, or when they get captured, they would commit suicide, so too would you with your plane. So the U.S., you know what Pearl Harbor was to the United States? Anybody know? Pearl Harbor was where you got sent if you wanted to be on a vacation. I went and had beers and we listened to this band a couple years ago when I was in Hawaii at the Officers Club because it was like half the price of all the other places on the beach. Literally, that Officers Club was made in the 1930s. I could not believe it. It's like I'm sitting here, like place where all these soldiers were hanging out at tiki bars, when this happened. It's not a joke. And they attacked on a Sunday morning when the army is at half staff, meaning only half the troops are even responsible for being awake, much less not hungover. Okay, take a look at this. What do you notice about this torpedo here? Let's see if anybody knows this. Any World War II buffs? Anybody? Okay, so there's an extra attachment here because there was this belief that Pearl Harbor could not be bombed because it was too shallow. All right, and so they had an attachment here which allowed for these torpedoes to bounce off of the bottom and not just sink into the bottom and explode. Okay, and so this is what the Japanese used. Okay, to get an idea of what you were looking at, this is Pearl Harbor here, and
we interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
Yesterday, we interrupt this program to bring. Yesterday, December 7th.
That just got worse. Okay, maybe I get it stopped.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific.
All right. I'm going to try to go back to that slide without it talking. If I can. I don't think I can. Okay, well, that's a bummer. I wanted to show you how the battleships were all lined up like sitting ducks. So only one battleship actually sunk. It's called the USS Arizona. That's the one that people go to visit today. It's an underwater. They call it an underwater tomb because there's still soldiers' bodies that are trapped in there. There's still oil that comes out of it because it sunk pretty quickly. All the other destroyers were actually lifted up, repaired, and then used in the war. But you can see, I mean, it happened. It had been planned for years. That's what it came out to be. Japanese lost 29 of their 353 planes that they sent. They sailed off of aircraft carriers or flew off aircraft carriers. United States, yeah, we didn't lose all that much. 8 battleships damaged, 4 sunk, 1 permanently sunk. But the biggest thing that we lost was this first thing right here, which I think I've talked to you about before. This thing called morale. Oh, wait, I talked to you about it in World War I. U.S. was used to being morale boosters, not getting hit first. Okay? I mean, I was looking this up today because I was kind of bored / curious. We've lost 11,600 Hoosiers to COVID, died. We only lost 2,400 Americans in Pearl Harbor. Think about that. Okay? That's crazy. And we lost a lot more Americans in 9/11 than we did at Pearl Harbor. We still think of that attack by a government that did not tell us they were attacking the government we were in neutral relations with to be pretty disturbing. All right, I'm going to stop here for today. Hopefully you're all awake. I had a great question from Lily Dole. She said, "Do they persecute Jewish people in Vichy, France too?" Absolutely. Eliminated Jews in France, all over France, when they occupied France. Okay, here's what we have to do tonight. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to screen share this. All right. And so tonight you need to do a peer edit for your DBQ. So I'm going to randomly pair you up here in the next minute. And all you need to do is exchange essays. Okay. For those of you in class, hold on a second and I will set that up for you. You are then tomorrow going to be working on editing your essay once you get your peer grading sheet back. And again, you'll have to turn that in. There will be no rewrites. So you only have one chance to edit your essay. Also, I was very disturbed at seeing how many people had not color-coded their essay. I said that was part of the homework yesterday. And then if you didn't take the quiz, your test take yesterday, first half, chapter 31, I'm about to put those scores in on 10th period. Make sure you get that done. Now, in person, how many of you actually uploaded an essay? Look around. Okay. All right. So you two exchange. Do it now. You two exchange. You two exchange. Samuel, turn around. And did you write one? You uploaded one? Okay, you guys do a 3-way. You 3, okay? All right, Zoomers, I'm going to randomly pair you up right now. If the person that I pair you up with did not have a grading sheet, just fill it out for yourself. Yes. Okay, do you guys understand what you need to do? Do you share your essays with each other? Okay, that's your only homework tonight. And I mean, if you want to start reading the rest of 31, you can. Thank you, folks. Welcome. Yeah. Whew. Well, that's good for us. Yeah. Yeah, it's better for you to do that than me. Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of weird stuff that was going on during that class period. So plus that went a little long. I was like dragging that out, and then it ended up like because I didn't, and then I just time got away from me.